All right. All right, DJ. So the last segment we left off, just got out of Buds. They were looking for volunteers to go to the East Coast. You and Cole were able to go.
Mm-hmm.
And let's pick it up to your first, what do you call it, station?
Yeah, your first duty station.
First duty station. Which is where and when?
That was in Little Creek, Virginia Beach. And that was SEAL Team 10. Checked in, God, was it late 2003, early 2004. We knew we were going to Iraq. We had an abbreviated workup cycle. So we basically, in the teams, when you first check in, you have, individual schools you go to. Guys go to sniper school, comm school, breacher school, RSO, all these little different schools. We missed that entire 6-month training block. So when we showed up, we basically caught the guys right after they graduated. So Kyle Milliken, God rest his soul, Dave Fagio, they had both just finished sniper school as new guys and crushed it. So they already had clout when they checked in. So they were already kind of in the workup. The old guys already know them. We all checked in a super surreal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we showed up, we didn't have a building. We were in the old Team 2 building in the back in trailers and a bunch of other stuff. And I mean, I grew up in that building. I mean, I had more time in that building than most of the dudes that were in there. I think my dad checked in there in probably 89, retired in 2000. And I mean, I was in there a lot, dude, all summer. Just so I felt like I was home. Like I knew all the hidden photos that were behind this and all the stuff that nobody else knew I was aware of. And most of the dudes in there, they knew me. We were like sharing a building with Team 2 and all this stuff. They were getting a new building built. And it was interesting because when we showed up, all the new guys check in, we're all in press camis. It feels like we're showing up to Buds, just nervous as shit. Like, don't know what's going to happen. And show up to the quarterdeck, check in, get your service record, whatever. And they're breaking you up in these platoons you're going to go to. And I was in Echo Team, which was the same team that lost all the guys in June 28th in the helo. That's the platoon I was in, and we all went back to medical to get checked in. We're probably back there for 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour. And one of the guys comes in, big dude, looked like a gorilla. Comes in the back, he's like, "Where's DJ Shipley at?" Right here. And he's like, "You're out of E team. You're coming to golf platoon." Okay. I wasn't super disappointed. I had a bunch of my buddies that were all going to E team, so I was like, "Oh shit, like, here we go.
You want to be there."
And now we're going to switch. And now I didn't know who was going to be in G. Cole ended up going over there. Nick Check, a bunch of those dudes there. It was a stack crew, man. I was very, very fortunate to end up in that platoon. We had some powerhouses in there. But I was nervous because now I knew they knew who I was. And now it's, am I going to live up to their expectations? Am I going to ruin this legacy? Am I going to do this? Like, I don't know shit, dude. Like, I mean, I'm brand new. I mean, I graduated high school early, got my driver's license, went out to California, but I haven't drove on the highway pretty much at all. You know what I mean? Like I'm new. So I'm checking this team, I'm still trying to figure out how to get around this city. Like I've never driven up in Virginia Beach before. I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere in the country. So it's a bunch of that stuff you're dealing with. And I remember they grab us all, we finish medical, we're all going to go muster with the platoons, and we walk in and they're all sitting down these old, I guess you call them like a sage brown, these shitty old couches. They had a VHS of Masters of Stone going with Dan Osmond, a rock climbing montage that was going on. A couple of dudes are looking at him. We all walk in and they don't even look at us. It was the most surreal thing. So dudes lined up on couches, dudes are grabbing cups of coffee, the platoon chief and the OIC are in the back. And they walk us back there. We walk past all these dudes. Nobody says shit to us. Like, well, this is different.
How many of you were there?
I think there were 9 new guys who checked in.
Okay.
There were 9 new guys and 9 old guys. And the guys we were rolling in with, a bunch of them just came back from Afghanistan on Team 10's first deployment. So they were all plank owners at the command, so they automatically had some clout. They just came back from the show, so it was very cool. And then we started getting broken up. Like, this is going to be your C-Dad. You're going to follow him. He's going to show you the ropes, show you around, introduce you to all these people, all these different departments and all that stuff. We started getting broken up. And then it wasn't shortly after, maybe either later that day or early the next day, then they want to see what you had. And it was all PT based. So we do big group PTs, just like back in the 80s and 90s. 4 mile beach runs into a 2 mile timed ocean swim, 4 miles back. We do these monster mashes and buddy carries and all this stuff. And everything was performance based. Like they wanted to see how good of shape you were in, how much you gave a shit. Same thing going to flat range. We had a water course that was set up that was extremely difficult. And back then, if you couldn't complete the water course, and I'll go off on a limb here and I'll say out of every dude on the East Coast, I'm not going to give away numbers on how many dudes there are, I'd say there were less than 25, maybe less, no more than 40 dudes that could complete the O course. That's how hard it was. It was nothing but upper body, nothing but grip strength, and it ate our lunch, dude. I mean, you think about it, you go down 50 meters, you turn, come back again, turn, go back again, turn, come back again, but it's all suspended from your arms, and you are smoked, and these guys are cruising through it, but it's because they do it multiple times a week, and we're getting burnt out. And one of the old guys comes in, he's like, hey, do you know the guy that runs the pool? I was like, yeah, I know him real well. I've known him since I was a kid. And he's like, if you ask him for a key, he'll give you a key, and you can come in on the weekends and practice. I suggest you practice. This is how you earn respect of the people, is when you show you're deficient in something, and then you bust your ass trying to get better. And that's what we all did. Every weekend, we'd go out Friday, we'd burn it down just like everybody else. And Saturday morning, instead of waking up drinking mimosas and Bloody Marys, we would all go in and do the water course. Then we would go out and get breakfast, get a couple Bloody Marys, and do whatever. And that was kind of the rhythm. So we'd skip PT, Monday through Friday, and we go knock out the water course over and over and over until we finally did it as a group again. And the new guys are busting through. I mean, it took months, dude, of just getting guys who are really good, and you go in and you do individual obstacles over and over, just getting your technique down, and when do I have to dry my hands off, and when do I need to use my legs and not my arms, and what are the little tips and tricks to be able to get through this? Because really, until you could get through it, nobody respected you, and it was obvious. We had a bunch of new guy evolutions you had to do, and if you weren't winning those, or if you weren't up to their standard, and a lot of times you didn't know the standard, it's very hard to earn their respect because you haven't done anything operational. There's no reason for them to respect you. And that's why we push so much physical performance, because that's your handshake, that's your calling card, that's your business card. How much have you cared, and how much effort have you put forth to be as physically prepared as you can? And then once you start doing that, you start to earn the respect a little more. I mean, we had some dudes who were some freaks, dude. Some absolute freaks. And that's one things I remember of checking in was how big everybody was. I mean, I was small, dude. I'd probably check in that team. If I was 170 pounds, I'd be shocked. But I mean, I went from 145 when I joined to 170 now in a year and a half, 2-year span. I'm growing, but I'm young, dude. I don't even have to shave. I mean, like, I still had a disposable razor. I mean, I'd knock a hair off the front or the side, and I'm good. Like, I'm still a child, so I'm still trying to learn my way. We go to the armory, we get all the guns, we start sighting in, and it was kind of like learning through a fire hose. And that's one of the things I appreciate now, the stuff we do now in here, is we are such better instructors than we had back then. And I'm not throwing shade at those dudes, but it was almost like they wanted you to fail to teach you humility. I didn't need a lesson in humility. I was already humble. And I think people confuse with my immaturity years on this planet with immaturity in the operational sense, or the respect sense. I respected everybody. I was very humble. But I didn't act like the typical new guy because I felt really comfortable on team guys. So they would pass shit back and forth, and I'd send it right back to them because that's what I've been doing my whole life, and that was not the approach.
Were they taken aback?
Well, they were taken aback to a certain extent, and then you get tuned up a couple times, and you're like, "Whew, man, this is very different being on this side of the fence."
Yeah,
and it's part of the culture, and you have to be moldable for the culture. If you're not, if you try to meet it with resistance, you are going to lose every single time. So whatever music they listen to, I mean, that's one of the classic tell-alls. They'll get new guys in a van, and they're like, put on whatever you want. You better be very careful what comes on that radio, because whatever you listen to is going to represent that entire group. And you have some guys put on some gangster rap, and if they ain't into it, they are not into it. I've been in teams where blasting MWA and everything else, like, they love it. You got to be able to read the room, and you have to understand who's in that van and who really cares and whose voice really matters the most. And, are you representing the group in everything you do? Just constant little lessons. But, we start to work up, we get all our guns, we do a CQB block. That block was one of the most intimidating blocks. One of the very first ones we did. I don't know anything about CQB. None of us do. We did a FAM and SQT. We don't know shit. I don't know the difference between high ready and low ready. I don't know footing. I don't know anything. So we're getting these classes and we're running through. And when you go down the CQB portion, they had a right house and a left house. And in the right house were all a bunch of ex-dev group cadre. And they treated just like green team. Move 3 inches to your right. Do this, do that. Tire drags back and forth. They're beating the shit out of you. So every time you go there, you get crushed. You come back. You're trying to learn, trying to regurgitate. But it was so hard to understand the concepts. And again, I don't want to throw shade, but it felt like we were thrown to the wolves to a certain extent. That we want to see how much these guys will be able to retain on their own, and then we'll polish from there. But it never felt like they were trying to polish. It felt like every single day you were in there was like a selection course. And it never really felt like you were part of the team for a while. I mean, for months. So you finish all that CQB, you know, you're probably out there for 4 to 6 weeks. You're shooting every day, CQB every day, full mission profiles, intro to night vision. Now you're shooting on nods. Now you're moving on nods and just everything. And because you haven't got to see the finished article, you don't really know what you're doing.
Right.
Even though you're doing CQB, you haven't put it in context. You've never been to Iraq. You've never been to Afghanistan. You've never seen an adversary. You've never been shot at. You've never heard what an unsuppressed 10-inch 5.56 sounds like inside of a closet. Like, you've never been exposed to that. So when you start to tie in all the pieces with full mission profiles, it feels like you're doing okay, but because they've never given you a debrief on what it looks like. And that's why a lot of stuff I put now is like the method actor. Like, I'm going to try to paint you a picture so vivid that even if you've never been there, you can get a general gist. You can get a better gist than I got back in the day. Of just keep doing it over and over and over. Like, I get it, but why does it look different when you go through the house fights, I go through the house? Like, their entries are more dynamic, their presentations were cleaner, their target transition was faster, their collapsing their sector was faster, their moving to the next threat was faster. All their process was so fast. How are they fucking doing that? And they were never giving us the secret formula, and really the secret formula is repetition. You have to do it more. You have to do it more. You have to do it more. And when you start doing it more and more without constraints, you really get to see the 360, 720 picture. Now you go, okay. You're going through that threshold as fast as humanly possible because you know all the rounds are going through that threshold. And you're really trying to make movement for the number 2 as to clear the other 50% of this room. That's why. But for whatever reason, I feel like they never explained it. So we're going through these motions, and I'm not saying we're burning bad reps, we're burning uncalculated reps over and over and over.
Yeah.
If you would have given me a couple little pearls of wisdom, that's what he kept saying. He's like, hey, he's going to throw out a pearl of wisdom, pick it up. No, give it to me. Stick it in your pocket and try to polish it later. And we get through all that. We feel like we're pretty good. Now we get to land warfare. Completely different set. You know, now you're running belt-fed machine guns. You're moving around on night vision in the trees and just all of this chaos. And again, like, you don't know what you're doing. You're just following the guy in front of you. He does this, you do that. You're like, okay. And the more scenarios you see, the more you can start to break a little bit of the rules and be a little more dynamic, a little more free flow, a little more thought provoking. You can ask a little more questions, but still, it's like, are we patrolling out in the woods? Like, patrol to contact? What are we doing? It was never like, this is how we're going to get to target. We're going to stop. And we're going to walk in miles. And if we get contacted, this is what we do. We never, I feel like we never painted the picture. So a lot of it, I was like, are there a bunch of trees in Afghanistan? Like, I don't, there are a bunch of trees in Iraq. Like, what are we doing? I never got it. I didn't realize it's just a standard training block everybody does. You overlay those tactics and TTPs and all those procedures, and then you overlay them on whatever reality you're serving. And then you tweak it just a little bit to match the terrain you're dealing with. And if you just would have told me that 3.5 weeks ago, I probably could have picked up on this a little bit faster. Stuff like that.
Is that them not explaining the why, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times they didn't explain the why. And I think now looking back, a lot of them probably didn't know the why. I mean, you're not dealing with guys with 10, 12 rotations back then. You got guys with one pump to Afghanistan who, was it busy or not? I don't have any idea.
Right.
Right. So maybe you don't know the why. Maybe that's why you weren't, just data dumping information because you didn't know. Now maybe we're all just learning this thing together. Nobody had been to Iraq. Now we're all going. Okay. So now what's it look like? Then the training started to get a little more purpose built. Now it's compound assault. It's a lot of vehicle work, in and out of Humvees, long range nav, and living out of the trucks and fighting out of the trucks and vehicle movement to contact and stuff like that. Now it started to make a little bit of sense, but even then, until you're there, until you have something to register as like, this is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really know. It'd be no different than being a surgeon and you're doing tabletops, watching PowerPoints all day long, and you're practicing on this gelatin block, and now you've never seen a human body opened up. You've never done it. Now it's for real. I mean, same principles, I guess, but
Yeah.
you're fucking nervous, dude. And that's really what a lot of it was, is the closer and closer we got, it started to make a little more sense, but I still didn't have reality to overlay on top of it. And that's really what I need for me personally, is I have to be connected to the reality of what I'm doing. And then I can connect all the dots between everything else. I can push them together and go, okay, now I got it. And I'd feel like even when we first deployed, I didn't feel like I was prepared as I wanted to be when we first went. I felt like there were serious gaps in coverage. Like, and I'm not blaming them on them. I'm blaming it on me. Maybe not asking questions, not being confident to ask the questions. Like, dude, I feel like I don't really know what we're doing. I've done the CQB, I've done this, I've done all that, but I've never done the whole thing, and I just wish you guys would do more story time.
Right.
Maybe they didn't because they didn't have the story to give. But that's a lot of stuff we do now, is I give you a story that we've lived through, that we can all connect with. And now when you overlay that on top of this training scenario, you're like, okay, well, he's already walked me through that. Like, this is what happened to him. If that happens to me, at least I've seen it before, I've heard it before. It's a little file folder I can keep reserved. And I mean, we geared up that rotation. I forget how long that workup was called, a year. I don't know. Just training block after training block after
So
training
from after buds, check in, a whole year.
About a whole year of training.
Of training.
Yep.
Workup is training.
Yep. And a lot of it felt like we do these big, almost like competitions. We call them CERDX or SIDX back in the day. It's like a big culmination exercise, a big FTX, field training exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like we were in competition. We'd have the exact same target, and this troop would go out and hit it. We would go out and hit it. They'd go out and hit it. And you're basically being assessed across all your peers. And it felt like we were competing for, there's one group going to Afghanistan, there's one group going to Iraq, and there's one group that has to go to Germany and kind of suck it up. And you don't want to be those guys. You don't want to miss the show. And Brad talks about in the interview, like, you don't want to be those guys. You don't want to miss the war. You don't know how long this thing's going to go on for.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he kept saying. Like, this whole thing could end tomorrow. We could get overseas and never do anything. We have to be in a position where they trust us enough to give us ops, and now we can be able to push.
What's the point of the guys going to Germany?
Staging. Yeah, there's not enough. The war was so new. There's not enough bases and locations and supporting assets to put all those people over there.
Okay.
So you put them near-ish. Now, they're still doing training. They're doing joint interops with all these other, the Polish Grom, the Zhejiang, all these other people. And then halfway through deployment, these guys would rip out, these guys would come in. Right? And we don't want to do that either. Like, I don't want to do 3 months and go sit in Germany for 3 months. I'm trying to do 6 months in Iraq, try to get as much combat as humanly possible, much experience as possible. That way, if this thing ends tomorrow, at least I have 6 months of combat.
Right.
At least I can rely on something. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, the way I kind of took it is they almost did like a draft. We were all sitting in the team room one day and came in, he's like, I'm going to Iraq, and everybody jumped up. Everybody's cheering, like, oh my God, thank you, Christ. Thank you, God. And he's like, but.
It's like going to lottery.
Yeah, he's like, but we're going to have to do some PSD. I'm like, you got to do what? It's like, we're going to have to do a little bit of PSD.
Oh, what's PSD for those who don't know?
Personal security detail.
Right.
Oh, no different than like Secret Service.
Yeah.
And they would charge us out to State Department, diplomats, senators, congressmen. We were guarding the president and the vice president of Iraq for a while, and just a bunch of these different things. And a bunch of guys had it. So when we first deployed, there were a shit ton of teams out there. I think it was 4, 10, 5, and 7 were all deployed in Iraq at the exact same time. So a lot of times we would just have spillover. Like us and Team 4, they'd have a team from them, a team from us, and we'd do these little bits and pieces. And then we had a staging base where we would do direct assault up. That's whatever you wanted to do. We wanted to do DAs, nothing but DAs. So you'd stage in this base, you get your intel, you plan for a little bit, you load it in the trucks, go out, hit a target, come back, eat breakfast, get a lift in, go to sleep. Rinse and repeat over and over and over. And what was cool for me is because I was so young, they didn't want me driving vehicles. And that's what you usually have new guys do, is drive. But because I'm so young, they're like, there's better guys that can drive. There's better guys that have been here before,
right.
Do whatever else. It's like, well, we'll have you do this for a little bit, and then we'll push you over, and eventually, one of the guys who's a super gangster, he's retired now. His name's Danny. He was one of the platoon chiefs at Team 4, and he called back to my LPO, and he's like, hey, man, we really love having DJ here. I'd really just like to hang on to him for a bit. And he's like, okay, you can have him for a month. I'm going to need him every now and then. So it's essentially what we did. I'd stay there and do DAs with those guys. Handful would do some Team 10, and then we'd rotate out for a week. I'd have to do the PSD thing, come back and forth. But it was cool, man. A small little special operations camp. We had, if I remember correctly, it was 10th Group SF. Was up on this hill. They lived in this palace. But I mean, we had an outdoor gym. We had a pool. Andy Arobito was out there doing the gainers off the roof into the pools, one of Saddam's palaces. The food sucked. The berthing was suboptimal at best, living on cots. But we had a Proxima. We had all the pirated movies you could ever hope for. And we would just do movie time and hang out. And for me, it was like the coolest summer camp experience of my whole life. Because you're with all these Dragos out there. I mean, he was going ballistic, breaching everything, basically rewriting the whole breaching manual. I mean, he had a couple hundred breaches on, basically a deployment and a half, and we were blowing up everything.
Jesus.
So it's cool to be able to sit down and see all these dudes, see him come back from the ops. We'd all come back from the ops, the debrief, the Copenhagen, the shit talk, just everything. It was so much fun to see. And then you started slowly but surely, feeling like you were earning your seat at the table. Like, right. I'm starting to pick this up. I'm starting to grasp this. I'm getting a little better. I'm getting a little more confident. But you were still a new guy. It was still kind of hard. And I remember probably 3 or 4 months in there, the old guys started to open up a lot more. Started to really pull you in their wing. And it'd be small things you'd never imagine. Like all the new guys, we all be out there watching TV. All the trucks been policed up. Everything's good. Everything is gas. The guns are jammed. Everything is straight. Now we've got 4 or 5 hours. And one of the old guys would walk by and we'd all be in there watching Napoleon Dynamite, and he's like, "Yo, you want to grab some chow?" Me? Yeah. Sure. Right? And you'd walk over to the chow, wouldn't say shit to you. You'd sit down and maybe say 3 or 4 words, and that was just enough to like slowly but surely being accepted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being there hanging out. Hey, we're gonna do Fight Club. You want to go? Yeah. We'd all just get up and we'd all just mosey on, and slowly but surely they just bring us into the fold. And by the last month of it, like, you really felt like you were part of the team, and it was really, really cool to see. I wish we could have made that transition faster, because that was one of my big concerns, because IEDs were so bad in the early days of Iraq. I mean, throughout the entire process they were a nightmare, but everybody was hitting them. Everybody. Except for us. And I was so, I don't want to say terrified, but terrified that I was going to get blown up in IED and never get a chance to fight. Or that I was going to get killed and I've never really earned the respect of the platoon that I'm in. Or I haven't felt like I'm one of the boys yet. And there's always that little, it's that little bit of uncomfortability. Like, I'm here, I've earned my stripes, but I feel like I'm not part of the team yet.
You haven't been tested.
Exactly. It's like, when is that going to happen? Fast forward to June 28th, that whole thing happens. And I think that was really the catalyst for bringing everybody together. Because then, SEALs being killed in combat is kind of theory. Because it never really happens. Even in training, like, it happens so rarely that you kind of like, man, that sucks. Like, how did that happen? Well, it's because you're human.
Would you say, I mean, it was far and few in between.
Oh, I mean, at that point, how many guys have been killed? 4? Maybe. I mean, not many enough for it to be a common thing. Like, it's not 82nd Airborne or something else where, like, you're constantly losing guys. It's not like that. It's not like the Marines when they push through for loot. It's not like that. Yeah. It's very, very different. And a lot of it's the mission planning, the professionalism, the focus, the targets we choose, the supporting assets. It's all those little things. It's the sum of all parts, and it ends up to mitigating a lot of the risk. When June 28th happened, that was such a weird time, man. And I don't think anybody's ever spoke about this. Maybe I have. I don't remember. But we didn't know who died for weeks, dude. We saw the helo go down. We watched on ISR. And then we went ghost town for weeks. And June 28th being Red Wings. Operation Red Wings. Yeah. Yep. So Marcus Luttrell, the whole lone survivor thing. And I remember when Navy Times came out, and they had a picture of Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, Matt Axelson, and then just a list of names. But the list of names weren't anybody that I recognized, because they weren't releasing the guys from Team 10. And I don't know why they didn't. They had a bunch of pictures of the 4 that were missing. And then just a potential loss. And they were going around showing the memorial video to everybody. And by the time it got around to us, we still didn't know who was on the manifest. They kept us on complete lockdown. Maybe some of the senior guys knew, maybe some of the older guys knew, and they just didn't share it.
What do you think that was?
I don't know, dude. Maybe they didn't trust us to not call back and tell people. Like, we hadn't experienced a loss like that. And there's a big logistical move that not everybody understands. All those families got to be notified. The mother, the father, if they're divorced, their next of kin, their brothers, their sisters, their wives, everybody has to be notified at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a huge move. So if I would call back and be like, Mom, Dad, so-and-so died, and he calls 2 people, that gets back around to them, like, it's over.
That's
Can't have
cluster.
that.
Yeah.
So, internet was brand new. They killed all the Wi-Fi. There were no cell phones. Didn't have that. There was no Skype or Zoom. Like, there's no way to come back home. They just lock you down. And our command master chief and our CO at the time had flown in from Afghanistan. They had done the ramp ceremony, and they're about to show us a memorial video they filmed at Little Creek. So they've already done the memorial. My parents went to the memorial. I still don't know who's on the manifest. I have no idea. And before he sat down to play it, he goes, I'm going to play you guys a memorial video. Let you guys ask whatever questions you want to. And right before he did, I grabbed him. His name's Chuck. Like, Chuck, any new guys on the manifest? No. And it sounds fucked up. There was such a sigh of relief. Because those are the dudes I'd known. I went through buds with them. We all lived in the same houses. Like, my mom and dad had a bunch of rental properties. All the new guys lived at my parents' rental properties. All of them. All of them. And we were tight, dude. And to be so new in the teams, so junior in the organization, to think that, God, how many guys went to Team 10? A third of my buds class died. Like, I didn't want to have to deal with that in my first rotation.
Yeah.
I didn't. And I know it sounds fucked up, but it was so much easier to swallow the pill initially that I wasn't super tight with all those other guys. You knew them all. The teams are very, very small, so you knew everybody. But you hadn't built that bond, that connection with them. And while it sucked to lose that much experience and that much horsepower and that much just general badassery, it sucked. But it was easier for me to stomach being that young, knowing they weren't my best friends.
Yeah.
And then it sucked even worse, because once you finish that whole thing, we still had to go out and operate. We're still doing the exact same thing. They pull us out right around the 6-month mark, and we're about to rotate home, but they wanted to send us to Germany for like 2 weeks to kind of decompress. The surviving members of Echo Platoon are in Germany waiting for us. And when we landed, we thought it would be like a huge homecoming. Now we're all finally together. We can shower you guys in love and give you a big hug and how fucking sorry we are. And I'll just tell you right now, they ghosted us. All of them. They didn't want to see us. They didn't want to go out and drink a beer with us. And I remember going to one of my best friend's room at the time and knocked on his door and opened up the door, and he's just sitting there and looks at me. Like, what's up, buddy? Just dead to the world. Didn't give a shit.
Grieving.
And it took, to me, it took way longer than I would have thought to be able to get those guys to go out and drink a beer. Let's let our hair down. It's not what the boys would want. They want you to, live your life and be successful in teams and go off to live amazing careers and all that. I'd say the majority of those dudes never came back from that. It crippled them, man. It crippled everybody, with those guys especially.
They took the brunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walked around just carrying ghosts. They had to clean up all their rooms, and it's like Brad talked about in that Sean interview. Now you're living in their rooms. You got to fold up all their family photos. You got to fold up their clothes. Got to mail them back. Their toothbrushes, their deodorant, everything. Their favorite T-shirt, the workout shorts, everything.
It's like one day they're not there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You got to box it all up and pack it all home. And that's one of the things that was surreal for me, is getting on that bird and flying home and landing in Virginia Beach and getting on that bus and pulling back into the team. When you got off that bus, my family was there, my mom was there, my dad was there, hugs and kisses from everybody. There was such a void of emotional support, because they wanted you to be home, but you could tell there was resentment that you were still alive. So the very first time we went to like a family event, where Gold Star wives were there. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever done. Because you get home
Yeah.
and people want to say welcome home, but you can't. Because you
Because
can't do it in front of them.
Yep.
So it's this weird, like, how's everything going? I don't know how to do this. I'm just a kid. Like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah,
to
that
you.
conversation must have been
It was
awkward.
it was, man. It was super awkward, and I found myself in this weird position because I was young. Then I think I was 19 years old at the time. Yeah, I was 19, and I came back, still couldn't drink a beer, and I essentially got pulled into the wives circle, and I think it's because I'm an idealist, and they could sense that I've been a part of these conversations my entire life. There is nothing that a group of team wives or whatever wives could say in front of me that I have not heard a million times. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up becoming like one of the girls. So we'd have family dinners and I'd be the only dude there. It'd be me and two other guys. And it was just that constant reinterjecting yourself into their family life to let them know that we have not forgotten. So if that's, dances for daughters or daddy-daughter dance, like dudes would just volunteer. They'd pick them up and they'd take them. Right? Like not showing them we haven't forgotten.
That's cool.
I mean, family dinners with 25 people over there. And dudes that weren't even a team, guys from team 4 over there, guys from team 8, whoever's not on rotation, they just dogpile into essentially Laura McGreevy's house, and we just have big family dinners. And that's ultimately how I met Patsy.
Mm-hmm.
Just being there.
How long was your first deployment?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, a little over if you count the Germany times. And
Can you
just shy of 7.
Okay. Can you walk back through your first time hopping off onto the tarmac as a young 19-year-old?
Like the C-17 flight in?
C-17 flight in, cargo doors
Dude, we
rolling down.
Yeah, man. We flew over and we stopped in Germany for refuel, got some coffee and grabbed a croissant or whatever, and we go to fly into Iraq, and everybody's stretched out in tarps and hammocks and sleeping on ground pads, sleeping on top of the ISU-90. I mean, just guys have these little portable Eddie Bauer TVs. They're watching movies and just,
Some flashbacks right there,
brother.
dude.
I
Yeah.
still got it, dude. I still got
shit.
it. I'll do a throwback on that. Yeah, I mean, dudes are just in there trying to do whatever you can. And I remember we were probably an hour out, maybe 2 hours out, and the crew chief started coming around and waking everybody up. And then the LPO's waking everybody up. He's like, all right, everybody get up, pack up all your shit, rolling up sleeping bags, rolling up ground pads, getting all your stuff ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then they all start changing. I'm like, what are we doing? They're like putting on camis. What are we doing? And then they all start doing it.
Were you guys in civies?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, okay. And then the ISU-90 start breaking open with all their boxes in there. Like, big Pelican cases coming out. They're assembling guns. And, okay. So we start assembling guns. They're putting on body armor. You're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Turning on radios, getting comm checks. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay.
And this is midair.
Midair.
The ISUs are your the
Just
Connex
big,
boxes.
huge shipping containers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're breaking all those things open. And we get about 30 minutes out. And everybody sits down. They all buckle in. They've got helmets on. They've got nods down. They've got their guns slung. We've got our big 3-day packs that are clipped into carabiners and this whole thing. And that dude starts doing evasive maneuvers on the way in. And I mean, they are sending it, dude. It feels like we're trying to invert. And I'm pretty sure they were sending flares off, the whole thing. And that final approach was one of the scariest things I've ever been a part of.
This was in Bagram?
That was Baghdad.
Baghdad.
And I mean, it feels like he's trying to crash land the airplane. That's what it feels like. In our mind, because you can see flares going off. You can see the night sky. I mean, you can see tracers. You can see all this stuff going off. And it feels like you're under fire. So not knowing anything, we haven't communicated any of this shit. We've basically gotten comm checks. Now we're just sitting there. I've never done this before. I have no idea. And 9 of the other dudes haven't done it either. And nobody's saying anything. So we're just sitting there, knees shaking, like, okay, here we go. Boom. We all touch down. Everybody unbuckles and like, oh, shit. Now we're all postured up.
How nervous were you?
Nervous, dude, because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm expecting D-Day. Like, I think the ramp's going to drop and we're just going to start hammering dudes out of the back of this. Like,
Just gonna eat it.
oh, bro, like, I'm prepping my safety selector. I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, lasers on, caps are off, checking my flood. I'm like, okay, here we go. Thing drops and there is a big yellow Caterpillar front loader.
Mm-hmm.
He jumps off it. He's like, hey, everybody out this way. Drops the ramp. We all walk out and there's a big bus there.
Like, what was that all about?
What are we doing? He's like, new guys stay here. Watch them offload the stuff. We'll meet you at the base. I don't know where the base is, dude. I don't know where we are. I have never been here. There is no one here that is briefing us. We are just figuring it out. So nine of us just stood there, watched him unload all the ISUs. He put them on a big flatbread. We jumped on the back of them. They drove us a couple hundred yards over to the place we were going to stage. Unloaded them all, put them on 4x4s, did a whole thing, broke them all down, and we walked inside, and they showed us where we were going to sleep.
Do you remember the difference once that bay door rolled down? Like, did it smell weird? Did it?
Oh, dude!
Was it hot? Was it cold?
At 5,000 feet, you could feel the temperature change when he dropped through it, and the whole cabin of that C-17 filled with. It was a combination between human shit and burning tires.
Okay.
It was terrifying, dude. Because, Black Hawk Down's one of my favorite movies, and I always remember that scene. Why are they burning tires? A signal to the militia that were coming.
Yeah.
And when you could smell it, that's got to be what it smells like.
That's
and
what
then
they're
the
doing.
lower you got, as soon as you open the door, anybody who's ever been inside a porta potty, in August in Virginia Beach, like just how bad, that's how it is. Every square inch of that country smells like human shit. It's disgusting, dude. It just is. It's filthy. And everybody gets sick, always upper respiratory shit going on. But yeah, I remember the smell more than anything. And then the heat. It slams into you and you just start sweating.
Like a humid heat?
Yeah, just that labored breathing. Like, God damn, this air is thick, cousin. Oh, just can't get away from it. Yeah, so we go over there. They show us the armory, drop guns, show us our cubbies, get all our gear laid out. This is kind of our alert posture. If mortars come in, this is what we do. They kind of walk you the whole thing.
Right.
And then they showed you all the essentials. Here's the bathrooms. Here's the showers. Here's the gym. Here's the pool. Here's the chow hall. Here's a big whiteboard. We're all going to check in, and you can only be in one of these 4 locations. So,
were you ever at a point when your first day in, getting familiarized with the area, you ever sat down and just thought, oh, this is it. I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah. Especially, because I should have been in high school. So, yeah, it was very surreal for me. You'd see the big overlay of the country we were in, the cities and towns and provinces in between and where we're going to operate from. And then they start pulling up all the intelligence and SIGAC, so significant activity. So all the IEDs that were going off, and you see the route from the base we are, and then a long stretch in the other base. So green zone's right here. This is the base we're at, and this is Route Irish. And it was the dangerous road in the world. I forget how many hundreds of people have been killed in a couple months before we got there. But he's like, everything's nefarious. Dead dogs on the side of the road, cans in the middle of the street, people on the overpass is throwing grenades. He's like, if you're going to get smacked, you'll definitely get smacked on this road. Everybody does. And one of the very first nights, that's what we had to do, was a convoy out. And I was a lead, and I was one of the lead gunners. So on a 50 cal, I was really good on a 50. And we would drive that route all day, all night. And it was terrible. We didn't have doors on the Humvees when we got there. There was no armor up in the top. You were just hanging it out there, and you got really numb to the risk really, really fast because you realized you couldn't control it.
How long after your first day did you go out on your first op?
We were counting the route, call them route clearances or kind of route recce's as individual ops because they were super sketchy, and we were doing that within the first 24 hours.
Oh wow!
And then DAs shortly after that. One of the very first ones, Drago blew this huge wall breach. Or he tried to. I remember him briefing it. And one of the guys didn't want him to use a charge as big as he wanted to. And he was telling everybody, he's like, if you don't let me do the charge that I need to do, it's not going to blow through the wall. Just not going to. And they didn't let him do the wall charge he wanted to, and it didn't go. He set a wall charge, if I remember correctly, like a C6 7-footer on the door, and then this huge charge on the wall, and then we wrapped down the stairs. And he would brief us. He's like, hey man, when the shockwave comes around the corner, it'll make 90-degree turns, it'll make 180-degree turns, and if you are standing in the corner of an intersection, stick your head out, open your mouth, and exhale when I say turning steel, when I blow it. The shockwave will hit you in the chest, it'll make you do a real big exhale, it'll feel like you knocked the wind out of you, but it won't fuck you up. If you hold your breath, you'll get jammed up. Okay.
What happens when you get jammed up?
Just a lot of overpressure internally.
Okay.
A lot of guys get little micro tears and descending aorta, and a bunch of guys have been killed from overpressure shots.
Oh, wow.
And these things are really, really big. And explosive breaching's been around, but at that point, nobody was doing it at that level. Those biggest shots over and over and over again. So that whole minimum safe distance was still being worked and reworked. Because some of the systems you have, some of the systems you have just aren't going to accommodate for that, or some of the modifications you make don't work out in reality.
Yeah.
So say your minimum safe distance for this charge is 18 feet. We would chop down the reels, the actual initiation devices, to 18 feet. Well, that doesn't account for if I have to make it around a corner. So really I need 30 feet to be able to make it around this corner safe. Well, now I can't. Well, now what do? Stick my head between my legs and exhale. Just send it. When Drago blew that shot, it hit us with such a force, it blew all my sinuses out. If you ever had like a really gnarly sinus infection or like brain fluid that comes out of your nose, it's bright orange.
Yeah.
Bright orange blew out of everybody's nose. Everybody's ears popped. I mean, it felt like it broke the teeth out of my mouth. We got to make a dynamic entry in here. So first shot's fired. Boom. Somebody gets smacked. We turn, we make entry. It's small room. I think big center fed room. One room off to the right, if I remember correctly. One room off to the left. And I think a little kitchenette that kind of terminated in the back. And I'm probably 4 or 5 guys in. And the first dude I see is one of the dudes had shot a guy in the face, hit him right in the corner of the mouth, and basically blew out this whole section.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, he didn't die. They didn't finish him, whatever. And now they're bandaging him up. And now we're doing bit TQ, the tactical questioning, all these people. And it was, sitting back, you don't really have a job. Now you're just external security, but now you're seeing all these people come out of their houses and move in and around. We're in a huge, like a multi-story, kind of like an apartment building. And there's just people everywhere, dude. Mm. And now it feels like we're fucked. Like, you just shot this dude. We just set off the biggest explosion I've ever seen in my entire life. Everybody's...
Neighborhood wakes up.
Everybody's up. Now, you're shining red lasers trying to get dudes back in their house. You can't just shoot these people. They're not brandishing guns, but they're everywhere. And you're like, man, are we going to get overrun right now? Black Hawk Down just keeps replaying in my head. Black Hawk Down, they're going to overrun us. They're going to overrun us. And like, you're kind of terrified at this point. It's like, let's just get us the fuck out of here. Walking down the stairs, we're bringing these guys off target, and one of the guys is like, if you think that's bad, just wait till we leave.
Oof.
It's kind of when we leave, he's like, oh, they're going to open up on us, dude. Every rooftop's about to light off like Christmas. Jesus Christ. So you're just sitting in the back of these.
Yeah.
These
no
Humvees.
Armor.
There's no armor. Dude, it was so bad at one point that I think it was Team 4. They were taking ballistic 9mm blankets and just hanging them in the doors just to try to get something.
Why didn't you guys have armor?
Too new in the war.
Too new in the war.
Mm-hmm. We grabbed everything they had in Mogadishu in 93 and just rolled it forward. Armor didn't start coming on for really until our second, third rotation was really when it started becoming prevalent. When they really started dumping money into it, as we started seeing the MRAPs and all the other stuff. Up until then, it was thin skin Humvees.
So you guys just kind of sucked it up with the Humvees.
Dude, we didn't even have strike plates. If you look at the front of the Humvee, there's like a big ballistic shield in the front of it. The barrel comes in between it. We didn't even have those. There was nothing, dude. I'd set up on top of it, riding up top, 50 cal in my lap, riding out in broad daylight. Like, there's no way to hide. There's no reason to hide. If they're gonna blow you up, they're gonna blow you up. Just gotta suck it up.
This op you guys were exfilling out of, it was at nighttime,
and
you're getting ready to leave.
Walking down the stairs and just looking up and just seeing all the people on the roofs.
Oh.
And you're just waiting for it. You're like, oh my God. Like, there's nowhere to hide. We're going to get in the back of these trucks and everybody's just porcupining out. You're just holding high, holding low, just trading threats. There's just IR lasers going everywhere and you're just waiting to be shot at. We pull out, drive back to base. Nothing. Like, okay. Survive the first one. Survive the first one and just rinse and repeat every night. Rinse, repeat every night. Over and over and over.
You mentioned the accepting that you have no control over it. And just...
I was like, the thing with the IEDs is they're so good at planning them and initiating them that if you don't have armor,
you're done.
There's nothing you can do. You still got to drive from here to there. And if they hit you, they hit you. And call it divine intervention, God, whatever you want to say, just very, very lucky. Because there were people that drove that route way less times than we did who got hit every time they left. And guys who drove it 3 times as many times as we did and never hit it once. It's like, there's no rhyme or reason. It's not because we were super badass, we planned the same route. It's like driving on 264.
Just so random.
One into the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we drove it a lot, dude. I got my notebook in there somewhere, I mean, all the time. Sometimes multiple times a day.
What were some of the challenges when you guys are doing this day in, day out through going down this route?
Complacency. Yeah, not being a victim of your own success. Thinking you've got it figured out and that's why you're not getting hit. People would tell you things, or we would start to regurgitate the same story like, oh, the reason they're not messing with us is because they're scared of us. Because we look so aggressive, because the guys hanging on the back of these Humvees don't look like normal soldiers. That's why they're not hitting us. They don't want to fuck with us. That's not true. That's not true at all. They just
right place at the right time.
Right place at the right time, or the latter.
Huh.
Yeah. It wasn't because you were so tough. Dude's way tougher than us, getting smacked all day. Just lucky, man. Just lucky.
Running that route and doing DAs, those were your primary roles during that first deployment?
Yeah, I got to do a little bit of PSD work. Had the president or the vice president. We had to do a detail for him one time. And that was surreal, dude. Because we drove, hours. And we're on these up-armored SUVs, and we're driving. He's basically going to do kind of like a political rally, but it's going to be in his hometown where he's from. If I remember correctly, it was like Tikrit or something like that. And we drove in there. Basically got the front car, another car, we'll say the limo's vehicle 3, I don't remember. I'm in vehicle 4, this vehicle 5, and then there's subsequent armor behind that. And we're all driving through. It's supposed to be in a low profile kind of manner. And when we turned down this final street, it looked like you were at Woodstock. There were just people everywhere. You couldn't get through the streets. They were everywhere. And they knew who it was. So they all started putting hands on the vehicles and they're just rocking it back and forth. And because you don't speak the language, you've never been there before, you don't know if it's friendly or if it's hostile. And my OIC was super badass, dude. He's like, look at the roofs. And you look up and there's just dudes on all the roofs with the black ski mask on, bandoliers of ammo, holding PKs,
Sketch.
dudes with RPGs just standing there. And you're like, do we shoot him? He's like, not yet. Well, okay. Dicey, get closer and closer, gets louder and louder. They're shaking it more and more and more. We're inching away, trying to horn these guys out. And at a certain point, I'm sitting in the back driver's seat. I'm sitting there, my OIC leans back, and he hands me a JanSport backpack full of hand grenades. And he's like, start prepping these. I've got it set in my lap. I was like, start prepping them? He's like, start untaping them. When I tell you, roll down the window and start throwing them out the windows.
What do you tape them?
It's like a safety mechanism.
Okay.
So the spoon or the ring's not just free floating. So
Makes sense.
yeah, just untape them all. They're all still. Also got the locking pin in them. But just now, I'm just sitting on the backpack full of these things, and I look up and he sees the same time I do. The back right passenger door opens up the vehicle in front of us, and that dude jumps out.
VP.
Jumps out and starts walking down the middle of the street.
Oh, that's
and
a nightmare.
Mob his ass. Like he disappears into the crowd. And I forget what the call was back then, but it was basically like, bail out. Like everybody get out of the vehicles and try to surround this dude. But the guy's still in the vehicles. Stay in the vehicles. He's like, we're going to have to fight back to him if everything goes crazy. If it gets super dicey, everything goes out of the driver's side, just start dumping hand grenades. Shoot everybody who's bad, save all the good guys, come get us. And it's like those breakdowns of communication leave a lot of room for interpretation. Like, if he wouldn't have pointed out those guys on a roof and I would have jumped out and seen those guys, I would have shot them. I mean, this dude with a PK with a ski mask on, 55 yards away from me. Like, you don't have a whole lot of time to mess around. That dude's got an RPG. That guy's got this. Like, but I mean, there's dozens of them everywhere. Like, it's a lot of responsibility on a junior force.
On a 19-year-old.
Yeah. Guys that don't really know what the hell they're doing. You're just trying to pick up basketball at that point. And just a surreal experience, just to see him. Like, are they friend or they foe? You have no idea. If you don't speak the language, you can't tell. Inside of that, you have no idea. You're just trying to not overreact. But you're also not trying to be so passive that you let them get the upper hand. It's this weird throttle control where you stay steady pressure. I can always accelerate real fast, but if I take my foot all the way off the gas, I've got a lot of room to make up to get back on steps. Just steady pressure, just throttle control. Go, go, go. Whomp. Back it off, back it off. You gotta be really good at being able to make it like that. And
How did that mission end?
What's that?
How did that mission end?
If I remember correctly, we ended up recovering him after an hour or so. We finally got done doing whatever he did. Nobody ended up cracking off. If I remember correctly, on exfil, we heard a bunch of explosions in the back. We were getting a bunch of intel, like suicide bombers and V-bids that were lining the streets, and they were waiting for us to get there, and they were going to start cracking them off, and just the whole thing was super dicey. And him getting out of the vehicle was never part of the plan. Never supposed to get out of the vehicle. But reacted to it, got him back in the vehicle, got him out safe. And yeah, the PSD stuff was not fun, was not sexy, but it gave me a really good look into how that mission set actually rolls. It's like we talk about Secret Service and the Trump assassination attempt, just how hard that job actually is.
Yeah.
Very few people have ever had to do it and see what it's like, especially when the principal does not do what you say.
Yeah, that's got to be frustrating.
Yeah. Because ultimately it's your responsibility.
Yeah, right?
And if you tell him to get down and he doesn't get down, then what? He gets clipped and it's really on your watch. You're the one taking blame for it.
Yep.
Yeah, PSD is not it's not a sexy mission. It's definitely not a fun mission unless you really like doing that stuff. Well, you learn a lot of good lessons about navigating human terrain.
Mm.
How to get people to listen to you, how to earn their trust, how to earn their respect, and how to get them to ultimately stop doing what they want to do and listen to what you have to say. At the end of the day, you might think you know these people, but if they grab you and drag you off, the only people coming to get you are us. You're going to have to listen to us. I know you want to jump on top of that podium and scream from the rooftops. Now ain't the time.
Yeah.
You got to make them understand that.
You said your up tempo was actually pretty high.
Yeah.
First time around, your first pump?
Yeah, I mean, as far as going out and doing the patrols, doing the route recce's, doing the DAs, doing the PSD, I mean, busy, dude. Yeah. Not a whole lot of real intense gunfights. At least not in that time. And I think a lot of it was with how strict they were with the curfews right then, because Baghdad was the hub.
Mm.
You start getting down to Al Anbar and a bunch of these other places, like, rules were very gray. That curfew we had them on, they meant it. And I mean, we used to joke because our first couple President's patrols were all at nighttime. You wouldn't see anybody. Not a single car on the street. No one outside. You drive past houses, you wouldn't see a single light on. It was a ghost town. And I used to joke, I'm like, I feel like we're hunting for the fucking Yeti or something. Like, I haven't seen an Iraqi in weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then right when you started kicking off DAs, you're like, oh, okay. Like, they really do mean business with curfew. As you start to get away from the city proper, those guys don't give a shit about curfew. You'd roll through, they're all on the rooftops, they're all got PKs, they're all got machine guns, like, they don't care. In Baghdad, because it was such a big presence, they really forced it.
Hmm. You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, but was your first deployment the first time you've actually proven yourself?
No. I feel like I definitely had multiple opportunities, but there was a hesitation in justifying. And I think that's the hard thing. Looking back on it now, the experience I have now back then, definitely should have done it. Should have. But it's one of those weird things where because you don't know and because the culture hasn't fully revealed itself to you and you don't actually know what you're doing. Like, there's been multiple times where you go to make a room entry, there's a dude standing in the corner and you pin him up and he's fighting to the opposite corner and you don't know why. You flip him ass over tea kettle and drive his head on the ground and hog tie him, and then you look over and realize he was actually going for an AK. Like, if my processing would have been better, I would have presented to him, collapsed my sector, seen that AK, and now I would have known what his intention is. Now when he goes for it, now I know what he's going for. Just because I'm so target focused on this one thing, this human 3 feet from me, it's the only thing I can see. I'm almost blinded by my own success. Now I've actually met him face to face. I'm holding on. Now I'm not collapsing sector. I'm not processing everything else in the room. Could have been a bad dude in the corner and I missed him because I'm so target focused.
Was accountability as a new guy, was that a main concern? Was it in the forefront before engaging?
You don't want to be involved in a bad shoot. And
Yeah.
You most certainly don't want to do anything that could bring a negative eye to the command, or the unit,
Right.
or whatever else. And just, the war is it's in its infancy anyway. And I'm not going to throw shade at anybody, but I mean, we were just coming off that huge nightmare at Abu Ghraib with the
Right.
prisoner abuse,
Prisoners.
and like that was a huge thing, man. Oh, we were very restrained in what we did to these people. Like there was never any prisoner abuse. We never treated them like shit at all. I thought I was actually, now I think about it, I was actually really taken back with how humane the dudes were. I mean, truth be told, if it would have been me in Vietnam, like I would have went ballistic. That's just not how it was.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't need to. And I think that was the cool thing, is to see people operating on that dial. Like, we can crank this whole thing over and kill everybody. But he's not doing anything that makes me need to shoot him.
Yeah.
We're just going to, after a while, you start realizing it's essentially catch and release. You're going to capture these people, you basically become a SWAT team. Going to drop him over to detention facility. He'll be released in 48 hours. Now he has a warrant out. It's like, that doesn't do anything. But
yeah.
those are the rules. That's what you want. If they want to fight, awesome, great. But now when they realize, if I just hide that gun under my bed, they're not going to find it and then shoot me. That's not a thing. They're going to tie me up. They're going to throw me in the back of the truck. They're going to feed me 3 or 4 meals. They're going to interview me for a little bit. They're going to release me and probably pay me money. And that's pretty much how it went.
Did you find Iraqis are kind of gaming that system?
Dude, that was their MO. I mean, you find their whole TTPs, everything they do, and they tell them. If they come to your house in the middle of the night, do not put up a fight. Hide all your stuff. They'd hide it in a neighbor's house. They'd hide it in creeks. They'd bury in the backyard, just like Saddam in his spider hole. They all had those. They'd bury everything. And when ISR got better, all the drones and stuff, you'd watch them do it. So you'd study their house all night long, and you'd watch them walk out in the back, pull up some big tarp, scrape out this thing, lift open a box, cover it back with dirt, put a tarp back over it. That's where he kept all the shit. So we'd go in there, we'd do the whole raid, bring them all down, walk outside, lift the box, grab all the stuff, HME, homemade explosive, grenades, RPGs, like bip it. We'd blow it in place. Arrest him, do whatever, take all your photos, for the court systems or whatever, but he'd get released. Now he's just that much more trained. Those people would go on, they'd train other people. This is what you have to do when you encounter the Americans, do this, do that. And then you get the guys that are the foreign fighters, the true believers, who they don't want to do any of that. I just want to kill Americans. That's all I'm here for. And those people, they didn't care about anything but fighting, which is cool to see both sides of it.
Were your mission sets back in the day as your first deployment? Who were these guys you were chasing after for direct actions or?
Dude, it was
raids?
everything from financiers to bomb makers to splinter cell shadow governors to a lot of Duswans. So
A lot of what?
Duswan. I'm trying to remember the I can't remember the actual acronym, but it's something unknown. God damn it! Essentially, a missing persons report.
Okay.
So it's not really a hostage rescue, but it kind of is. You have loose intel, and you're basically just combing the desert trying to find these lost Americans. Convoy gets blown up. They drag out 3 bodies. Jessica Lynch, stuff like that.
Right.
It's like now you got to spin them. Now all assets go towards that. So you're basically combing the desert for weeks at a time trying to find these things, and you'll hit a target, and there'll be a pair of American cami bottoms. You're like, oh, fuck. What's this? There's an American flag patch here that's been cut off a uniform. You're like, God damn it. And then you find their bodies in a Tigris or Euphrates River. You're like, okay. Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
What would you say would be the first sign of just ugliness in war that you experienced during your first deployment?
All of it, dude. All of it. Like, some of the IED stuff, some of the VBID stuff was pretty crazy. And even though we weren't getting hit by them, they were in our area, so we would get all the reporting of it. So VBID drives through he blows through a U.S. checkpoint and detonates himself. Well, how'd he get to the first gate? Well, he had his son with him. Yeah. What was his son doing? He said he was dropping his son off to to do something with the embassy. He was going to be a translator or something like that, and like, just detonates him and his 7-year-old kid. Like, okay.
It's terrible.
Yeah, man. Like, they'll rig the whole house to blow and kill the whole family in one shot. They, genuinely speaking, they didn't care. And I think to be able to see that full picture was, it sounds messed up, but it's kind of fascinating because you hear about like kamikaze bombers and just people that'll go the whole distance. Like, you can't win those things. And you got to see it in real time. Like, well, at the end of the day, it's like, well, we just want to get into a gunfight or whatever. It's like, yeah, but these dudes will charge you and blow themselves up. That's a very hard thing to combat. Especially when they're walking around in plain sight. They're just like this, and you have no idea they have an S belt on or an S vest, and blow themselves up. And like, oh my god. Yeah, it's hard to win those kind of things. It's hard to put in perspective for other people that haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good lesson learned.
Yeah.
The whole way through, but yeah, I mean, from the day we got to the day we left, I finally felt like I was getting up on step, and I was like, now I just want to get a better target line. And that's when you see the different levels of the game, is how good your supporting assets are, how much interagency operability you have, and just how much intel they're pouring into you, how much your guys truly give a shit. And you get some intel guys who, they don't know anything more than you do, but they'll get on these tangents where they're like, we're running this thing to ground, and it'll be such a good target set every single time you go out, just kinetic. I don't even care if we're making a difference. It certainly feels like we are. Because all the dudes who are true believers, we're smacking every single night. It's like, this is what we're after. And you'll get some guys like, well, we really got to disrupt this financier network. And it's just banker after banker after banker. And you're like, we're essentially chasing the money for nothing because they get released too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of hard to manage your expectations because you don't really know. You haven't done enough rotations to realize what's good intel, what's bad intel, what you can actually take away. And we do these big briefs. What's the most likely course of action? What's the most dangerous course of action? What are we going to do in both scenarios? And you kind of get numb to the risk, especially you start hitting, we'll say a dry hole, but not a kinetic. Once you stack up 10 or 15 of those, laws of probability tell me 16 is going to be the exact same thing. Op 17 is going to be the exact same thing. You start to believe that, and then all of a sudden, boom, shit. Instead of resetting every single time, like, this is the one. This is the only op that matters. Tomorrow doesn't matter. Yesterday, I don't give a shit about yesterday. Today's the only one that matters. And I wish I would have done a better job reshaping my own narrative every time we went out. You always have those signs where you leave the base. Complacency kills. For sure. But if I would have done a better mental reset, if I would have pushed that on some of the other guys with me, it's the only op that ever matters. Not the one we're going to do in 3 weeks, not the one in 3 months, not the one in 2007. This one tonight is the only one that matters. If I die tonight, none of the other ones matter. It's hard to have hindsight in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that's why we push a lot of stuff we do know. Learn from our mistakes, not our successes. Like, I fucked this whole thing up, dude. I've been complacent multiple times. We all have. A lot of times, if you're not going to be able to get a mulligan, you can't redo that one. If I give you one gift, it's live in the moment right now. Don't worry about tomorrow. Deal with tomorrow when it comes. Right now, it's locking 100% focus. Don't think about what you're eating for chow. Don't think about the workout. Don't think about what football game you're missing. Don't think about any of that shit. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is right now, today.
How'd you fight complacency?
Surrounding myself with professionals and trying to mirror. Just do what they do. Walk the way they walk. Talk the way they do. Wear the same kit the way they do. Eat the same foods, the same workout, the same fight club. Watch the same movies, the same music. Just, you see someone who does it at an ultra high level, just mirror that. That's a proven method. It's no different than Kobe Bryant. If I wanted to be an amazing basketball player, I would just take his routine and I would mirror it. That's a really good starting point. Might not be perfect for me, but it'll get me to where I need to go, at least on that same path. That's the same thing you do in teams. Like, I really want to be like that guy. Why? Because he's good at everything. Looks apart, sounds apart, briefs apart, performances on par with everybody else I've ever seen. And his methodology and his meticulous nature is what I'm striving to be like. Well, just do what he does. Yeah, I am. I'm just going to do exactly what you do. And then as soon as you find a guy that he's mirroring, you mirror that guy. And now you start to leapfrog. Well, that guy's marrying him. Who's he marrying? That guy. Oh, that guy shit's real tight. Okay. Now it's just a leapfrog.
Right.
Find that mentor, adopt his policies, his procedures, his routine, and then look to upgrade. Who's the next guy? Who's the guy after that? Who's the guy after that? Who do I want to be in 5 years? That dude. Well, better start studying his human moves. Everything he does, just mirror it. That's a really good starting point. I think a lot of guys want to reinvent the wheel or think, oh, I can just take out 1 or 2 pieces. Really look at what he does. Do you want to be him in his entirety or just this one aspect of his life? If it's just this one aspect, then just live that aspect. Right. If that dude's running dials and switches and you don't need to have a dial, don't run a dial.
Yeah.
You don't have a wife, you don't have a girlfriend, you don't have kids. You can be super selfish right now. Just take what he's doing on this aspect and just elevate it. And that's where you see guys go from good to great really, really fast. Nick Check was like that. Didn't have anything competing with him. I mean, he had a girlfriend, but
nothing that really tied him down.
He was a nomad. He just trained his ass off. And for me, it showed in his performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, just try to surround yourself with people that are better than you and just adopt what they're doing. Makes it so much easier to digest because now it's a proven model and you can see it. And you can see it as it progresses daily. Like, damn, man, he's really made a huge stride in the last 60 days. How is he doing that? What are you reading right now? Give me that book. Like, what are you getting out of this book right here? And it'll be, talent code or something like, okay, well, let me read that.
Mm-hmm.
Subtle little changes. Try to make yourself a little bit better every day.
Can you run us through what you were thinking, if you could remember, or the emotions that went through you during your last day leaving Iraq and your first day landing in the U.S.?
So everything, once you get overseas, is kind of a countdown. It's a countdown to positive and negative. Some guys look at it as, I've got 180 days till I get home.
Mm-hmm.
And some guys look at it as, I have 180 days to do as much as humanly possible. A lot of guys, you start to trickle down to that last 30 days. That's where it gets super dicey. The first month and the last month are always most dangerous on deployment. You look historically speaking, that's when people die. First 30 in, last 30 out. That's when it happens. And I think it's complacency. You either haven't built in your routine yet. You don't understand the battlefield geometry. And that's where you're vulnerable in the first. You're trying to kick off deployment with a bang. You're accepting risks that maybe you normally wouldn't have because you don't know the landscape. Or at the very end, you've been super successful for 5 months or whatever the deployment is. Now it's the last month. You're like, I really want to close it out on a bang. You really start to take a little more risk. You're like, oh, we can really, really push. Like we're chasing an Illume cycler, this one shadow governor, this one financier, whatever it is. We're so close. I do not want to hand this off to SEAL Team Pick One. Like, we want to knock this out, and you really start to lean forward, and that's when you start to accept more risk. Like, well, the better answer would be to do a helo insult. Like, we're going to do a helo assault. Mm-hmm. We don't have the assets. Fuck it, let's push anyway. And then everybody buys in. You're like, let's go. Let's go. And you start to buy a little bit of that. So for me, that last 30 days, I didn't really want to come home. I damn sure didn't want to go to Germany, but I didn't want to start and stop because you see guys, they start to pack down their stuff and they've got to unpack it just to go again. They get extended. Pack it up, break it out. Pack it up, break it out. And once I started packing it up, I wanted to be gone. And if I remember correctly, I didn't start packing my shit until we were probably 24, 48 hours out. Everything I have there, it's kind of like here. I hoard it for a little bit and then I just throw away everything. Mm-hmm. So everything I had in there, I just threw away. Like, I'm not packing any of this shit up. I packed up the bare essentials. But it was surreal boxing that up because I didn't know if I'd ever come back. And I loved it. Even though it wasn't my most amazing deployment, I loved it because it was my first introduction into the teams, into combat, being able to see it get done. And I just wanted to do it again. I was like, God, is there any way I can just spin this thing up here? We talked about volunteering and staying longer. It's like, dude, I'll do another 6 right now. Like, I didn't want to come home.
Was that a thing?
Not at the time. There were some guys that got to stay over. They do a month. They do turnover with this team and just kind of help bridge the gap a little bit. But I'm a new guy. They don't need me to do that. I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
No reason for me to do that. But I know I didn't want to go home. And not because I was in love with Iraq. I was afraid I was going to miss something. I'm like, they're going to hit a nasty target set as soon as we pull out of here, and these guys are going to get it all. I'm like, oh, damn. Kind of jealous, a little bit envy. I'm like, now we set the groundwork, and we've got this badass target line. We're going to hand it over to you, and you're going to come in here and just clean house. And part of that is like, you want them to get that, and there's a part of you that's like, I'm really jealous.
You don't want to miss out.
Yeah. You don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
But I remember that last drive over, had to get in the Humvees and had to drive that whole way to be able to fly out. And it was like, this is going to be it. This is going to be it right here. This is when you're going to get me.
It's the anxiety, huh?
Like 100 yards.
Mortar.
75 yards, 50 yards. Right at the gate. I can see the gate. 25 yards. Oh, we made it. Oh, we made it.
Mm-hmm.
Grab some chow, green bean coffee, jump on the airplane, and fly home. And then rinse and repeat again.
Yeah.
It's always a surreal experience coming home. It's the same thing when you land. Every single time you land. It feels like you've been there 1,000 times, and it feels like you've never been there before. It's a weird anomaly. It's like deja vu, but kind of in reverse. It's like a distant memory. Like, this feels familiar, but I don't know why. Then after 20, 30 minutes on the ground, you're like, oh, yeah, I've been there before.
Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really get settled in quick. I tell it to everybody. As soon as you can get in a routine, be the best thing you can do. You figure out what everybody's doing, whatever routine you have to be on, and then fully adopt it. I've seen guys do every model you can possibly imagine, and we'll call them vampire hours. So we would wake up at 4 p.m. Wake up at 4 p.m., do fitness, whatever. By 5, you're eating. By 6, you're coming back, take a shower, whatever you're going to do. By 7 o'clock, you're briefing. By 8 o'clock, you're watching movies. By 9 o'clock, you're doing vehicle checks and you're driving out. Come back next morning, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Come back, eat some pancakes, get some bacon, take a shower, pass out, sleep all day, wake up and do it again. I've seen guys that have done the polar opposite because they're not expecting a consistent schedule of every single night we're going out. And they're like, well, I want to stay on this schedule because then I'm awake so I can call my family, or I'm awake so I can do this and do that. I'm going to be on a daytime schedule. That way I have a full day routine. My circadian rhythm will be better. I'm sleeping. And then you realize that there's no reason for you to be up because every single person in this team is asleep, except for you. And now we do 8 days consecutive back to back. We're not coming back till 3 in the morning. And you're staying up the whole time, that ain't going to work. So you take these little cat naps and try to make up for it. By day 10, you're on vapor. Like, you can't maintain it. You've been on hell week this whole time. People try to do that. People don't want to accept it. I hate sleeping in hot tents, and for whatever reason, every deployment I've ever been on, I've slept on essentially the east side of the building. So as soon as the sun crests, it bakes on the side of that goddamn tent. And it's miserable, dude. Just laying there, just sweating. You got fans on you. You'll rig up these weird AC ducts where it's just blowing on you, and you're just laying in filth, just sweating. I mean, gone days, weeks without showers. Just the whole baby white thing, bottles of water, just all of it. It's very uncomfortable until you just accept it. But getting the routines, that's definitely where it's at. If you can figure out your eating schedule, your lifting schedule, your sleep schedule, everything else will fall out in the wash. So when guys don't do that, you really lose grasp over time and the things you can't control. Everything just starts getting muddled together, and then one day turns into 20 days. Like, fuck, has it been a month already? Because you're not in a routine yet. It doesn't feel like, and then you don't feel like you're at home. It always feels like you're staying at somebody else's house. You know what I mean? Like, anybody stays night at your house, it's not his home. Still feels weird about going to the fridge. Still feel weird about waking up in the morning, making coffee. Am I going to wake anybody up? It's like, if you adopt the whole routine with everybody else, this is your house. You should feel comfortable. Come back here and sleep. And it's our home. It's our home for the next 6 months. Make it your home. I think getting on routine's crucial.
When you got back to Virginia after doing a pit stop in Germany, first time seeing your parents, how proud was Dad?
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, through the moon.
Beaming?
Yeah.
Mom, too?
Yeah, but it was a sigh of relief because they had been doing all the memorials for June 28th.
Right.
And that was our team. That was the first deployment. It was so close. And I think they knew that I was supposed to be in that team. And even though rewind it, I wouldn't have been on that helo regardless. None of the new guys were on that helo. Still really close.
Yeah.
And then you look at Iraq, I mean, they were glued to the TV. I mean, he was still doing contracting at Blackwater and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you're seeing it. Scott Helston being hung from the bridge.
Remember that.
Like, it's happening, dude. Like, this is not the 80s and 90s. Shit is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once the IEDs kicked off and then, the Iranian influence came in and now we have suicide bombers and all this other stuff. Like, this is legit. This is not training ops. This is all real, and these people are actually trying to hunt you all day. Yeah, I mean, yeah, super proud. Let's say so.
All right, let's close this out. But before we do, was your dad? He was with Blackwater at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Was he in Iraq as well while you were in country?
He wasn't. He was in Afghanistan. Not at the same time, but around it.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, let's wrap this up, and then we'll come back.
We'll pick it up for second deployment.
Second deployment. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Cool.